All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into the crisis in Venezuela, and it's a complicated one. You've got two completely different emergencies happening at the exact same time. So let's just jump right in. On one hand, you have the government run by Nicolás Maduro, and they are gearing up for what they believe is an imminent U.S. military invasion. But on the other hand, for millions of regular people, their biggest fear, the thing that consumes their every thought, is just finding enough food for the day.
And this quote right here from a young cook, it just perfectly sums it all up. I mean, that really hits you, right? It shows this huge gap between what the government is worried about and what people on the ground are actually living through every single day.
So you have to ask, how did Venezuela end up here? How did it get so torn between these two completely different extreme anxieties? Well, to really get a handle on it, we've got to look at both of these crises separately. Okay, let's start with the big picture, the geopolitical chessboard, if you will. We need to see how this whole military buildup is actually playing out. Because, the government's fear of an attack, it's not just coming out of thin air.
And when you look at the U.S. military presence, it is massive. I mean, we are talking about the largest American military force we've seen in this region in decades. You've got something like 10,000 troops, a whole bunch of warships, an aircraft carrier group. It's like they've literally created a ring of steel around Venezuela.
And what's really wild is just how fast this all escalated. Look at the timeline. It kicks off in August with forces just starting to gather, but by September 2nd, bam, the first direct military strike on a vessel. And since then, it's just been one thing after another. 14 strikes, 61 people killed, U.S. bombers buzzing the coast, and then these really confusing messages from the White House about whether land strikes are next.
So, how is Maduro's government reacting to all this? Well, they are definitely not just sitting back and watching. They're getting ready, they're moving troops to the borders, deploying anti-aircraft batteries, and even telling citizens to form, quote, self-defense militias. It's become this really classic, super tense standoff.
But, okay, while all of this high-stakes military drama is playing out on the world stage, there's a totally different kind of war going on inside the country, an economic war. And it is absolutely devastating everyday life for millions of people. Okay, look at this number, 269.9%. Any guesses what that is?
Yeah, that's the estimated inflation rate for 2025, according to the IMF. And get this, they think it's going to shoot past 680% in 2026. It's the crushing weight of hyperinflation. And let's be clear, the reality on the ground is already devastating. I mean, think about it. An inflation rate this high means the money you get paid on Monday is worth way less by the time Friday rolls around. Your entire life savings? Poof, gone. Just buying milk and bread becomes a daily battle.
And that brings us to this next number, a really big one. This represents the staggering human cost of that economic collapse. 7 million. That's how many people have had to pack up and leave Venezuela. They're fleeing everything, the economic hardship, the political situation, all of it. And it's created the largest refugee population on the entire planet. Just think about that. And what about the people who stay behind? For them, life is just dire. In 2024, 7 out of every 10 households were living in poverty. The government has cracked down so hard on information that they're literally arresting economists just for publishing the inflation numbers. Jobs are almost impossible to find, and as a result, the streets of cities like Caracas are filled with families, even kids, just begging to survive.
Now, this whole crisis isn't just contained to Venezuela. It's actually causing a huge fight back in Washington, a major constitutional debate right inside the U.S. government.
And it all revolves around this one key law, the War Powers Resolution of 1973. This thing was passed right after the Vietnam War, and the whole point was to stop presidents from getting the U.S. stuck in long, undeclared wars without getting Congress to sign off on it first. Basically, it says the president has to pull troops out after 60 days unless Congress either declares war or gives the okay to stay.
So here's where it gets really interesting. The entire legal fight comes down to one single word: hostilities. The Trump administration is making this argument that, hey, since these are drone strikes from far away, our troops aren't technically in harm's way. And if they're not in harm's way, then these actions don't count as hostilities, which means that 60-day clock from the War Powers Act, it just doesn't start ticking. But critics and legal experts are firing back, calling it a wild claim of executive authority. They're saying, hold on a second, we've always considered these kinds of standoff strikes to be hostilities in the past. So it's a huge debate.
And all of this brings us right back to where we started, with the people of Venezuela. who are just trapped. Trapped in the middle of this unbearable, totally uncertain wait.
You know, even with all the government warnings and this huge U.S. military presence right off their coast, you don't see a big rush in Caracas to buy supplies or prepare for war. And why is that? It's simple, really. Most people just can't afford it. It's hard to stock up for a war when you're already struggling to stock your pantry for tonight's dinner. And that brings us to this final quote, which I think it lays the desperation completely bare. It's from a school teacher in Caracas. She says, "I don't know what's going to happen. The situation is so difficult that if something is going to happen, I hope it happens fast. We cannot live like this anymore." Wow, that's a truly haunting thought, isn't it? And it leaves us with this really heavy question. What's it like to be completely trapped in a crisis that has no clear end in sight?